afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you're connected. My name is Gianna Camarini and I work at UNCTAD-UNODC. I'm going to present today the UNCTAD-UNODC Conceptual Framework for the Statistical Measurement of Illicit Financial Flows. This presentation has been prepared by myself and by Enrico Bisogno, Chief of the Data Development and Dissemination Section at UNCTAD-UNODC. I would start to give a little bit of a flavor of what has been developed so far by UNCTAD-UNODC for the measurement of illicit financial flows. These two agencies are co-custodian of the SDG indicator 16.4.1 on illicit financial flows. And I've started to work by consulting in 2017 by consulting several actors and global experts on illicit financial flows to try to find a definition for statistical purposes and be able to provide inputs to statistical offices and other relevant agencies for the measurement of illicit financial flows for statistical purposes. Illicit financial flows are phenomena either by definition and no official statistics exist. However, they have a tremendous impact on social security, peace, justice, and sustainable development. Illicit financial flows are at the crossroad of multiple policy agendas then. Are an instrument for evasion and or avoidance and therefore imply a loss of public resources, are an instrument for committing or facilitating corruption and a vehicle to foster illegal market or invest related proceeds, so proceeds of crime or several types of crimes. And as such, they erode rule of law and they weaken the justice system. As well as illicit financial flows have been related many times to terrorist financing, and as such, they represent a big threat to state security. UNODC and UNCTAD have been working within the framework of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Developments, which have identified within Goal 16 on peace, justice, and strong institution, target 16.4. By 2030, significantly reduce illicit financial and arms flows, strengthen the recovery and the return of stolen assets, and combat all forms of organized crime. One of the two indicators that measure progress toward these targets is indicator 16.4.1 that measures the total value of inward and outward illicit financial flows in current United States dollar. UNODC and UNCTAD are co-custodian of such indicator and are mandated to develop a statistical methodology as well as give input on statistical methodology to measure such indicator, which so far was an indicator classified as tier 3, meaning that there is no methodology, international agreed methodology to measure such flow. So with this work, UNODC and UNCTAD has been proposed a methodology and a framework to measure such flows, bringing such indicator from tier 3 to tier 2, meaning that a methodology exists, but data needs to be collected to be able to produce estimates on such indicator. The two agencies started from identifying what illicit financial flows are and identifying what can be bringing into this definition for statistical purposes. Illicit financial flows have been identified as a monetary measure of international transfers of illicitly earned capital, as well as include originally legal capital transferred internationally for illicit purposes, and include as well legal capital that has been transferred illicitly abroad or used for illicit purposes. All these three types have a common element. All these three are illicit, which includes also illegal, but definition of illicit illegal will be provided, or probably has been already provided by Steve McFeely of UNCTAD on their side of the presentation. They are cross-border flows, and their flows, we're talking about flows and not stocks. So we are talking about a measure of flow and not a stock measure, and we are talking about not net flows, but inward and outward illicit financial flows. Just to say that this presentation focuses only on illicit financial flows from criminal and other illegal market activities, where UNCTAD provided or is providing another presentation for tax-related and commercial practices illicit financial flows. This work and this distinction of the two works, the two line of works, is relevant because the approach proposed by the two agencies, it's an approach that is disaggregated approach and a bottom-up approach. Why this is in the context of the approach that some literature focus so far on top-down measures of illicit financial flows, using several strategies, but not distinguishes what are the sources of illicit financial flows. A granular approach has been selected as the most clear and the most suitable approach that allows policymakers to be able to identify and target the specific sources of such funds. And this is really important, and this allows to keep more clear the policy agenda perspective that has focus on all the type of illicit financial flows that are illustrated before. These the two agencies have identified 4 types of illicit financial flows that are illustrated here. From illicit tax and commercial practices, there is a wide range of illicit activities, not only illegal, but some of them are legal formally, but they are illicit, from such as aggressive tax avoidance to tax evasion, which is an illegal activity, and other type of illegal activities such as illegal market activities, corruption and exploitation type, and terrorist financing. Going more into detail of what are activities related to illegal market and criminal activities, we identified under illegal markets, including illegal markets activities such as drug trafficking, firearm trafficking in protected wildlife species, and under exploitation type and terrorist financing activities, kidnapping, slavery and exploitation, sexual exploitation, extortion, and so on, which are separated because they have a different impact and a different type of, let's say, approach to national accountants, because some of illegal market activities are productive activities where the actors of the transaction have a consensus in the transaction, whereas exploitation type are kind of a theft activity, and one of the two parts of the transaction generating illicit financial flows has no consensus. That's the reason why we distinguish between the two of them. Just to give more an understanding of what is the approach can be seen from a country perspective. Illicit financial flows emerging from drug trafficking, seen from a perspective of a country importing and consuming drugs. A country importing drugs is facing a transaction of imports that correspond to a transaction of resources that go from the country abroad for such a purchase. And this is an outward illicit financial flows that is generated during the productive process. In the same time, in the country, outer value is generated while processing and selling drugs at the wholesale and retail markets. And this value that is generated can be either consumed or invested in the country or abroad. And this investment or consumption abroad generates other type of illicit financial flows that do not belong anymore to the productive process, but belong to another type of also choices, type of investment or consumption choices by the criminal actors. This is why we distinguish between the left-hand side of the slide and right-hand side of this part. This slide between income management and income generation illicit financial flows. Income generation illicit financial flows are connected to illegal markets and their functioning, and they're linked to transnational supply and demands of illicit goods and services. Whereas income management illicit financial flows are flows that manage, they're related to the management of income generated from illicit activities, and they are linked to the consumption and investment patterns of illicit actors, as I said. These, how we implemented practically these models. In the recent past, UNODC has tried to measure illicit financial flows, for example, from drug trafficking activities, and especially in relation to income generation type of flows. And the results they will want to give today are just Just to give you an example on how much this flow generates every year in the country. Specifically, this case is related to opiates trafficking in Afghanistan, and we estimated that the amount of illicit financial flows related to export of opiates from Afghanistan abroad generates a value that is more than double than with respect to the agricultural products exported by the same country in 2018. Another example on Mexico is from a recent pilot activities we conducted between 2018 and 2020, is that illicit drugs generate exports that correspond to an inward illicit financial flows estimated at around between 8 and 17 billion US dollars, which more or less equals the value of agricultural products export between 2015 and 2018. And on smuggling of migrants, we estimated the value of smuggling of migrant services exported by provided by local migrant smuggler to migrants that were trying to cross, and they crossed the country, Mexico, and go to the US, equal more or less the value of the air passenger transportation services exported by the country. This is to conclude why it is an advantage to, and what are the advantages of such framework, and what are the what these frameworks allow to measure is that the key feature of such framework is a country level approach that allows to measure IFF at the country level, at the national level, in line with SDG indicator framework. And the framework is compatible with the system of national accounts and balance of payment framework, so is adopts the same terminology of national accountants. At the same time, it's a comprehensive approach, so includes all type of IFF and allows to target specifically the origin of such flows and the type of activities behind the generation of such flows. And this disaggregated approach allows a more granular understanding of what are the sources of illicit financial flows for each country. Then I would like to come to a conclusion and to thank you all for attending this presentation and for following us. For any information, additional information, I would like to invite you to consult our webpage where the statistical framework is presented, or to read our papers. Thank you. Thanks for everyone.